Hey, a pleasant good day, everybody. Welcome to this edition of True Philadelphian Sportscast, the grittiest take as hockey looks to be coming back, even in the midst of the virus, as obviously training camps have moved from 6 to 12 as we check in with our co-host Andrew today. How you doing today, Andrew? I don't know how the weather is down there, but we're definitely getting a little bit better up here today, not as humid.
I'm doing very well, thank you. It's pretty hot down here. Just got done a nice good workout, so feeling pretty good. And I mean, I know this is a hockey podcast, but baseball is expected to come back now, so that's positive news. And then, like you said, hockey should be coming back probably about a week or two after baseball starts back up.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, it seems like that'll be around the time the regular season kicks off the beginning of August, which baseball's around the end of July. But anyhow, I think because you were talking about the health before we got to the hub cities or anything like that, because the NBA had a good idea with the obviously it's optional, but the ring to track symptoms of the virus and everything. And I know Canada with Trudeau, when I saw the release about stuff, has an app and stuff that helps you track it. If the NHL is able to do something similar like that, now all players might not go for it, but whoever does it would be beneficial. Don't you think, like the NBA, that would be a good idea for them to take up and do, especially if, say, the app Canada's using, they're willing to work with the NHL to maybe have something come out for them as well?
Yeah, it'd be nice to have that again. It's got to be optional, like the NBA is doing. I think that's good. It lets the players use it if they want. Again, though, what's weird about it is it doesn't go back to any officials. So I mean, it's more just if the players want it. So I don't know how much traction it would gain overall.
That I think needs to change with the NHL. I think with the NHL, it is kind of a violation thing, but I think you have to have it go back to whoever you consider your trusted hand. You know what I mean? Like you have to like label someone like I trust this person, and then it goes back to them. So it's not just you making the decision of if you should tell somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's where I'm saying like the NBA doesn't even have that yet. So I think
Oh,
that'd
I
be interesting.
understand that. Yeah,
That'd be interesting to see where they go with it because, I mean, I could be wearing this ring, right? I could be wearing that. That's what you're talking about, right?
yeah, the ring
Yeah.
or even an
Yeah.
app, one of the two, whatever tracks it. Either way, it's kind of the
So
same principle. Yeah.
so I mean, if I'm wearing this ring, right? I'm wearing this ring, and I go out to the bar that night. The league's never gonna know. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like to me, it's a great idea in principle, but like in the end game, there's no punishment. One, there's no way for the league to find out unless someone takes a picture of the guy and goes, "Oh, here's whoever at whoever he's breaking NHL's quarantine." So like honestly, the social media would be more informational to the league than the actual ring itself. So again, I love the idea of it, but for me to say it's actually going to work, you need to get the players on board with it and have them actually wear it or actually allow them to send the information to coaches, owners, and etc. And but I don't think that ever happened because that's kind of an invasion of personal space. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of hard to do that. Again, I love the idea and it's a great idea, but in terms of the league caring about it, I just don't see how it works. And in that sense, that's where I'm confused on it and would want an answer from the league on that point.
No, I completely agree with that standpoint. That's kind of where I was going to go with it too. There is kind of a secondary, like you have a cause of this is a good idea, and then you're supposed to have a follow up point to hone in the idea. You didn't seem to really have that follow up point when it came to the NBA, and then obviously the NHL. We don't know if they even had inclinations of doing this. I just thought if they could figure out doing it, it would obviously be a good idea to piggyback off of the NBA if you could figure out those honing in points a little bit, like you were getting at, because obviously health and safety is the utmost thing, which is why when it comes to the next topic, we're getting on hub cities, all these proposals and stuff usually involve showing people spacing out and whatnot, obviously, to be able to still have some social capacity. Um,
Yeah, I think one thing. Sorry to cut you off. I thought you were finishing up.
yeah,
Um, well, I think one thing I can get behind. Well, obviously I can get behind it. It's not affecting my life, but I think one thing the players might be able to get behind is say you don't give the information to coaches and owners and all that, because again, that's kind of invasion of like their personal space kind of thing, and you got to have that trust somewhere. But I wonder, everyone likes to talk about the captains of teams. I wonder if there's any way they'd agree on allowing captains to see it, and like so instead of that player getting caught, suspended, fined, or whatever, the captain like kind of takes control there in that situation. And I know like so like for example, I mean, say something happens with the Flyers organization, whoever goes out or whatever breaks quarantine or whatever, Giroux gets notified, and as a captain, he kind of cracks down on the team, kind of not really the team in general, yeah, either, just kind of that guy or whoever else is with that said player, and he kind of like sets the tone.
That would be a good idea. I think it might have to expand just due to knowing some captains and how not every captain's necessarily the most vocal. Some of them are more just lead by example, which G's kind of more one of them. I think you would have to probably have one or two, maybe like the leadership core of the team, be the guys that get notified. So it's not just one up to one other individual, since some captains like G are usually not as much like that, where that might be someone like Cooch or someone like Voracek that kind of goes, yo, buddy, get your act together. Like,
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd say it'd have to be the captain, and then they have what, two or three assistant captains, I believe.
yeah,
So it'd be those three or four guys total. That way, also, I was going to say you also need someone else, because you can't just have the captain get it and then the captain goes out that night, because then no one will find out about the captain. So he's got to be part of it too. So it'd be all that way. If the captain was to go out or something, the assistants could crack down on the captain. So
yeah.
I agree with that. I would say you'd probably get the captain and then the assistants, or maybe. Hey, because I think each line has a quote unquote captain, right?
Well, you have a quote unquote captain of each line, but technically each line doesn't have to have one of your assistants on it.
Okay.
But you still have a leader of each of your lines. So obviously, if like Lawton's on your fourth line, Lawton would probably be considered your leader of your fourth line. Stuff like that.
Most vocal would have been like Wayne Simmons back a couple years ago. He would have been the best to have that vocal wise.
Oh yeah, vocal wise, Voracek honestly is probably the best when it comes to vocal leaders, especially from talking to Jamie, who I now work with the Flyers Nitty Gritty, which is really fun and enjoyable as well. He has been in the locker room and stuff. Jake seems to be more vocal than it comes to G, and so is Cooch a little bit. So I think Jake would probably be the guy, though, if someone's being a complete idiot, that would probably let them know. And I don't think anyone's going to be a complete idiot, because I think AV is pretty good at having the house under control too. But I'm just saying, I think that would be Voracek, because if you watch any of the interviews and stuff when it comes to like the breaking the ice, or I can't remember what it's called, but the great stuff they had on NHL Network before the season with us, where Voracek's usually one of those open personality, but also he's not going to mess around when it comes to telling you if you're not doing you know what, right? So,
Yeah.
But the reason I was saying before about lifestyle, because you're talking about going out and stuff, a lot of the hub city proposals for the NHL heavily involve lifestyle. Like, for example, the Toronto one's actually, the new Toronto one's very similar to the NBA's, because they're going to use the Canadian National Exhibition Grounds, which is just outside of its downtown core, is basically a 40-acre campus bubble. They would have access to the BMO Field, which is an area to train, Coca-Cola Coliseum, which for everybody that doesn't know is the home of the AHL's Toronto Marlies, because I don't think anybody that listens to our podcast knew that. The Toronto Raptors practice facility, and a Hotel X, which has 400 rooms, and then other hotels in that surrounding gap. So they made it more hub city centric, similar to the NBA. And they also said that they're going to be able to have similar stuff that we heard with not Vancouver, with Edmonton and other things, where they will also be able to potentially have some stuff open. For example, like they said, food trucks for players and outdoor movie theaters, since obviously you can space out. Movies are one of the easiest things to be able to space people out, especially if it's outdoors. So they'll be able to have some amenities like that. And that seems like a pretty good plan for Toronto, and then obviously after this we'll get to Edmonton. But I figured, what are your thoughts on that plan as one of the Canadian cities?
I mean, I think that's what you're gonna have to do wherever you go. I don't like you can't if they choose Las Vegas, you can't have it open. I mean, Las Vegas has been one of the worst destinations right now, in terms of rising for the virus, as they open back up too soon, and obviously it's hurting a little bit in that sense. And I mean, I think that was the biggest surprise here. I think the NHL, as good as they've done before, I don't think they did a good job at picking these destinations. If I'm being honest, I mean, Pennsylvania has been one of the uh, best states that has cut down on the virus, and have I mean they were even I forget who it was, which health organization, since there's so many speaking on this, gave three states a shout out for how well they've handled everything,
One of the
and one of them was Pennsylvania. And what does the NHL do? They cut out Pittsburgh. Like that just doesn't make sense to me. I mean,
well, they
there's no fans, so it doesn't have to be the best hottest destination there is. I mean, uh, to come here and eliminate some of these cities that were in better shape than the ones they kept just doesn't make sense to me. I can't speak on. I haven't really followed Canada's sense, so I don't know where they're at in Toronto, Vancouver, and Edmonton. But I think I think the NHL, as good as they've done, I think they aren't doing very well with these hub cities. But in terms of the car stuff, and yeah, you got to give the players something to do. Obviously, you can't just go out, play the game, get back to the hotel, and then sit in the hotel for whatever amount of hours outside playing. So I think a nice movie theater like that would be great for these guys. I mean, it's gonna be obviously all old movies because it's tough. No new movies are coming out right now through all this, so it'd be very tough for them to get new ones. Obviously, so it's gonna be interesting how like what they I guess they'll maybe let the players pick and pick the said movie, whatever. So I think that would be a good idea there. But no, if Toronto finds a way to kind of do all that stuff, and it'd be very
Toronto
nice.
have also been going down recently. I must point out. I was following that on NHL Network, and Jamie, when he released the video on Google too, pointed it out. Toronto's actually has been doing a good job in the recent weeks. Their cases have been plateauing or going down. So that's also a positive step for them to be able to potentially get it as well.
Yeah, I just with the cities they left in the U.S. I don't know how
Well,
they.
Pittsburgh is actually an easy answer. I can answer that for you. Pittsburgh is one, the stadium is new, but it's not close to other practice rinks, so it wouldn't be that close of a bubble.
Okay,
Between
but
the
where in
NHL,
Vegas is there another state like
there it's
they?
actually pretty. They said they do have practice rings closed because when I read Vegas's was the article I read where the guy got it from Pierre LeBrun and then commented himself. Matt Vator said despite the recent spike in positive coronavirus tests, Las Vegas is still a favorite because the city's multiple arenas and interconnected high-end hotels make for an ideal setup for isolating players and staff in quarters that have considerable amenities. The league would need to have some medical facilities set up, but they said if they're able to do that, then Vegas, even with the coronavirus uptick, and also the other article I read from the Las Vegas Review said that MGM has agreed to not open certain hotels so that they don't even have anything open to any capacity to the public where when players start to go in there, no one's been in there before. So even if they get cleansed again, it's going to be just getting cleansed again from no one being in there. So they actually do have a lot of precautions set up, which I agreed a little bit with you yesterday. But then when I looked into it more, Vegas seems like they're kind of have a similar bubble situation to Toronto because everything's right by the Golden Knights' new stadium. So that's because it's right by the Vegas Strip. So I don't think that would be that big of a deal. I suppose if they said, "Hey, let's play in New York," where the Madison Square Garden's over here, Barclays is over there, and then you don't have either of them really that close to each other. They're more spaced out. You know what I'm saying?
I guess in a way, but that's not going to solve the case uptake. I mean,
But the case uptake is also because of normal people that don't adhere to what they're supposed to adhere to. If you create a bubble because of
Yeah,
the infected
but,
hotels, and nobody's allowed in those hotels other than personnel involved in the league. You're not going to have people that decide to be idiots, other than if that's personnel involved in the league, and you just hope that doesn't happen, come into the hotel from the outside.
yeah, but you're gonna have to leave the bubble at some point. I mean, you're gonna have to replenish some supplies. You're gonna have to replenish all that left and right. So I mean, someone like there's gonna
That's
be
going to be
people.
somebody, though. It's not like you're going to tell players or coaching staff to do
Well, that's
that.
how someone gets it, though. That's my point. Like,
Oh yeah, but you got to do that anywhere. That's just not like that changes no matter how good the bubble is.
no, that's what I'm saying. That's why you don't pick a hot destination right now in cases.
Oh yeah,
Because
but then at the same time, we could argue the NBA should just bag its whole plan and go somewhere else, because they're going to have to potentially still get supplies like Disney.
they should. The NBA should not be playing in Orlando if these case rises stay. If the NBA if if the cases stay where they're at and keep rising like they are right now in Florida, and the NBA plays in a month, that would be ridiculous. I honestly believe that. I mean, you know me. We've talked about it on here before. I want sports back as much as the next person, but it's not worth. If I'm an NBA player, honestly, I'm sitting out. Like, right now, if the cases continue. And I mean, Avery Bradley said it yesterday. He's going to sit out, and who knows who's going to follow here in the next. I forget when the deadline is for that. I think it might be Thursday at 5.
Uh,
But
I thought it was. It might actually. It's either the 24th or 25th. I thought. So that's either today or tomorrow. Because
okay,
today's.
so yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see. I'm interested to see where it goes, and I mean, all these guys, all these players are already getting the virus before as they're starting to move into these. I mean, you look at you just go around sports. I mean, you look at the Phillies. They have about
I
eight
lost
players, about
Florida.
15 workers, and
Yeah.
that's just a small workout in Florida, in Clearwater. I mean, you have NBA guys already getting it left and right, and I mean, that's why these guys aren't going to want to go down and play. And then NHL, you had a couple guys get it already. And some NFL players are getting it, and these are just. I mean, look at colleges. I mean, you have people going back to school and stuff. Look at Clemson University. They had 30 people tested the other day after a few workouts, and 23 of them, I believe, came back positive.
Oh yeah.
That's
Oh, I understand that. The thing is, Vegas doesn't have, like, Florida has very exponential increases each day, where Vegas, when I looked at it, was still more by the hundreds and not the thousands, particularly each day when I looked at it last night, before going to bed. So it's not necessarily at Florida's level at all. Where if they're able to kind of keep people in a bubble, it's not necessarily at the degree of Florida, especially if, like this other guy also pointed out in his article, an NHL writer, Ben Goetz, that writes for Las Vegas's journal as well, said that the league also there also has a great working relationship, obviously, because they had the NHL awards 10 of the last 11 years there, but also they have the very close major hotel experience and plenty of event experience areas in that area for to be able to be set up if you want to have like different workout venues or whatever have you for those, to take advantage of those spaces. You have, like I said, the MGM International plans to keep some of its hotels closed, so they would have sizable traveling parties be able to stay there. So I think they're figuring all that out and doing it, where I don't think they're going to pick Vegas if they feel that's a huge uptick. That's the main reason why I also feel Los Angeles is still as an option, because when I was reading an article yesterday, they said the fallback, it seems like if it wasn't Pittsburgh, the fallback option for the NHL was always LA, because you have a bunch of big venues around that area, and there's different practice facilities, colleges that have ice rinks that are not too far from there. So that I think is probably their fallback in the U.S.
yeah. If I'm them, I'd go to Canada. Their cases are doing a lot better. I think that'd be the safest bet. Um, but that's just me. Again, I think they narrowed it down to the three wrong cities, and but what do I know? I just again I think the cities they picked is popular cities, and it's gonna be forced, and they won't be able to finish. Is what I believe will happen if they continue in those destinations. So I think the best bet for the NHL would to go to probably Toronto, or any of the three, because Canada as a whole has been doing really well and gotten better. So
Although Vegas, the other thing we have to remember though, Las Vegas was not really doing bad until they opened a little bit early. And I haven't been paying attention to their politics, so I don't know if they eventually, like right now, looking at a few days, they were at 355. Like it kind of has stayed at the same level again in recent days. The most it upticked was the 18th. It went up 410, 19th 445, according to this, and then it started going down, and then it's at and then 355 was the 23rd, where now's the 24th. So it's not nearly to the level of Florida. So if they're able to keep it in a bubble, or if their governor, and again, I said I haven't been paying attention to them, but if they're doing more now in response because they saw it go up a bit, unlike Florida's government, then that could still be quite a possibility a month out. Well, about a month out now. So that's also what remains to be seen. Obviously, Florida did not respond with the cause. They should have responded with an effect of let's nip this in the butt right now, where they responded with let's see how this goes. So if Vegas doesn't do that, then they're also, I think that will still give them a high percentage chance of probably having it, because the last time their cases spiked a lot was all the way back in April, and that was before they completely stopped everything. It's gone up, but the incremental increase, the highest day was like around 500. It wasn't, like I
I,
said, they've been in
I'm
hundreds,
just
not.
saying Canada as a whole had is averaging probably around 300 cases in the last week as a whole, while Vegas,
It makes the
well,
most sense, honestly, if you're picking Canada, because Edmonton, they submitted a plan that they also have a lot of stuff available, movies, separated golf courses, also going to have golf simulator game. They're going to set up like an Olympic Village seclusion, basically. But also Alberta didn't have many cases from the get-go. That was one of the best areas in North America. So being in Alberta, that Providence, that would make the most sense. Where Toronto, because of the depreciating cases, I think is going to make the second most sense, because if they decided to go with two in Toronto, you also have East West there. So in order to not have, which I don't think is a major advantage anyway, but people knowing the nooks and crannies of their stadium, you could swap the East and the West and have the West go to Toronto and have the East obviously then go to Edmonton. So that would also be easy to do that, which I know Bob McKenzie reported about a week ago or so now, that the NHL would have interest in doing that if they picked an East and West city. So those two would work perfectly, because that would be an East and West city. So I could see them doing that. My worry would just be, I think they want to give something to a U.S. market, obviously. I don't think they want to just put everything in Canada. But again, this is a different time. Everything should probably come more to health and safety first, rather than worrying about market share, especially when the NHL does really well with Vegas already. Like I said, they had the NHL awards 10 of the last 11. Vegas has been doing very well since they entered the league. They've probably been, if they continue to do this, they're going to go down as probably the most successful expansion team in their first few years of existence, because they've been competitive ever since entering and have been a very good in terms of market share and revenue. So they don't really need to worry about Las Vegas that much. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to touch on hub cities, but I kind of agree with you. Health wise, it would probably make the most sense to do in my opinion, Edmonton and Toronto, just because you have East and West at that point. And they presented a more thorough plan, where Vancouver is apparently, from one article I read from Bob McKenzie and Pierre LeBrun, one of the favorite destinations of players, but they have like no practice facilities in the area. So you'd have to drive like about 30 minutes out, and there's not as many hotels. So that's the only issue there. But I don't know if you had anything else on hub cities. If not, we can obviously move on to just touching obviously someone or Flyers and how we think they're going to stock up in the playoff.
Yeah, that's all I had on that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to cover that well so people kind of knew what would be the case. And then, so for the Flyers, I'll shoot it over to you first because you obviously made what some would probably that listen to the podcast consider a bold prediction on our Sixers one with the high podcast on how far the Sixers could go. I'm interested to see where you think how far the Flyers could go, who of course ended at 41-21-7 with 89 points this year and a plus 36 differential. Where do you think our Flyers can go in this postseason format?
I think there's no reason the Flyers can't win at all. I mean, they've been dominant all season pretty much. They had a good shot to win the division. They were 1 point back. So there's no one in this league that they can't beat. I mean, obviously the tougher teams will be the Bruins will give them a really tough matchup. I'd probably see a lot of low scoring games there between the two great goalies in the league. So I'd say in the East, the team to be most afraid of would be the Bruins. I think if the Flyers could win that opening series and get the 1 seed, that'd be big for them. That way they can play the lesser team each round as they reseed. So I see no reason why the Flyers can't make the finals. I'd say again, I think the Bruins would be the toughest matchup, and then you got to go in the West. I'd say you got to be scared of the Blues. Their defense is really good, so I think they can give the Flyers a bunch of trouble.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think another team we obviously always have to look out for. Obviously, they struggled in the playoffs last year, but they're still one of the best teams in the league and one of the deepest teams in the league is Tampa Bay. I would say out of the second teams to give trouble, the Flyers actually looked better against Boston this year than we have against Tampa. Out of the teams we're playing in the round robin, we've looked the worst against Tampa. So that's the team that really only should concern people going into the round robin. Otherwise, we look pretty good in that because you've got such on that team. Bless you. I think you sneezed. Was that?
I didn't sneeze.
I thought I heard something in the background. But they have so many guys that would be on top 6 roles like Yanni Gourde, Tyler Johnson, Kill Lewins of the world. Some guys that I wouldn't be surprised if you hear the Flyers rumored to go after in the offseason, since we could use some of the skill set of some of those guys, because they have so many depth guys on their team. That's a team to reckon with, I think, as well. They also have one of the top goaltenders in the league in Andre Vasilevsky. So Tampa's obviously a team that the Flyers have struggled to play against, and Vasilevsky at times has played like the second coming of Dominic Hasek. So when he's played us. So that's also another thing where obviously in the playoffs, the Flyers have taken care of the Bruins at times. Also when we went down 3-0. So that's another thing that I'm worried about the Bruins as probably, but I think for me, I think the Lightning are more even than it is for you just because of how we struggled against the Lightning this year with the Bruins. Like AV even said after that last loss before the stop, he basically said, I don't remember what the exact quote was now, but paraphrasing, in terms of losses, that was a really good game. Like, basically saying that. Like, they played a great game against the Bruins. It's just the Bruins stood on their head that day, and they were able to get that win.
I see what you're saying. I just think the teams that play the best defense usually give the Flyers trouble, I feel like. I don't know if you agree with that, because the defense kind of matches the aggressiveness. So teams like the Bruins, who have given up the fewest goals in the league, always give the Flyers trouble. And yeah, we played a good game that game, but again, obviously come out on the wrong side of it because you can't.
That's a good point. It's just Tampa also has a really good defense. They have a deep 4 at least, because you have Hedman, McDonough, Sergachev, who might end up being moved, but then Shattenkirk. So like they have a 4 deep, and then former Flyer Coburn, and depending who you pick to go to the next guy, and then another former not is liked former Flyer in Luke Shen, because we traded JVR for him for no reason, but that's a completely different topic. So they're a deeper defense. They're just not as defensively touted popping, because some of Tampa's defense is more offensively inclined. So I still get what you're saying. I just think Tampa also probably has more speed than Boston in order to keep up with us too. So that's the other side of it. Boston obviously has more older players mixed into their lineup. So Tampa doesn't have that. So that's also the other side I was thinking of a little bit too.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong in that sense. I just.
But don't get me wrong, Patrice Bergeron's Patrice Bergeron. Patrice Bergeron could be 37 or 47, and he's probably still going to be worth somewhat of a damn in a hockey game, especially when it comes to the postseason. So, and then Marchand's having a hell of a season again. So, yeah, Boston's a team to reckon with mostly every single year. I just think if I had to pick a second team, it would be Tampa, because Washington, compared to those two teams, has a lot of question marks in terms of is Holtby going to come back and start playing well now because he had a very bad regular season when he was in, or is the rookie Samsonov going to be able to step up for them, or is one of their other goalies going to have to step up out of nowhere because of how there were struggles with Holtby. So that's why Washington, to me, is not as high up there. Otherwise, if Washington had more solidified goaltending with their offense combined with some good defenders, obviously a guy that could end up winning the Norris in terms of John Carlson, you have a pretty good team there. They just don't have the consistent goaltending of these two teams.
Yeah.
So in the West, though, you picked what was the team you picked again, since we ended up talking about
Well, real quick, I guess I have to say you're probably right. I mean, Flyers 0-2 against Tampa Bay this year, and they're 2-1 against Boston this year. So they've been able to play up with Boston this season. So if you're looking at head-to-head, you're probably right about the what's it called, Tampa Bay pick.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the exact stats. That's why I didn't want to say them. I just remember them saying on NHL Network that we played Tampa the worst this year when they talked about the Flyers. That would end the round robin. That should be their only concern team in the round robin, because we played Washington pretty well this year.
We played Washington really well.
Yeah, we played them very well. And then we played Boston. We probably could have been 3-0. Not should have, because they goalie stood on his head in that last game. But
yeah, so the two Boston, like all the Boston games were really close. So the first one we won 3-2 in a shootout. Second one we won 6-5 in a shootout, and then obviously the last one we just mentioned we lost 2-0. And then Tampa Bay we lost 1-0 and then 5-3. So just that's what we did head to head. Actually, our next game, if the season didn't get canceled, was against Tampa Bay. So.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, we were down in Tampa for the Flyers rolled down in Tampa for the meeting, and it's like, and the season's over, and it's like, oh, okay. I remember on a lot of podcasts them talking about how weird that day was because they didn't go to practice, and it was like nobody knew what was going on. If you had to play a game for like one final game before it stopped, that probably would have been a lot more awkward than just having what happened happen. But in terms of the West, did you say? I didn't know if you said. Did you say the Blues or did you say the? I didn't remember when you went back.
Honestly, any of the top three teams in the West scare me the most. Honestly, I think I'd be more afraid of the Stars than the Knights. But Avalanche, I got probably would have been Rookie of the Year winner. Blues, have always been a good team, defending champions right now, until we get another Stanley Cup final matchup. So they've obviously been a good team, and they continue to into this year lead the West in points. Again, very solid all-around team, top to bottom.
Top 5 team, because you said top 3 and then mentioned the top. I just wanted to point that because this Vegas has 86 points, and then it says
Vegas is in a different division now.
Oh, you're going by division. I thought you were going by top three in the conference. My bad.
Mm.
Okay. No, never mind. You're right then. I thought you were going by. Yeah, in terms of winning the division, sure. Yeah, the Stars were in the Stars. The Stars are, since you brought them up, would they kind of be a dark horse because they are fifth in the conference, but they got Ben Bishop, who has stepped up time and time again as a goaltender in the playoffs. They obviously have veterans in Sagan and Ben, followed by others as well. Are they a team you would kind of consider as a team that everyone might not be paying attention to that could actually get to the Stanley Cup in the West?
Absolutely. I think, especially this break year. I mean, I don't know who was hurt on their team, but I mean, unless it was a really serious injury, you're going to get everybody back. They were one of the best teams in the West before they kind of went into a big slump there. I don't know the exact
Right.
reason for it, but they lost six straight before the season was canceled. So, I mean, if you even win, just say you win half those games and get 6 points, you're right in the middle of a division race there with everyone else that we just mentioned in the Avalanche and Blues. So I think the Stars would absolutely be a dark horse right now because, I mean, with the rest, you get a full team back, and it'd be interesting to see where they go from there. I think obviously, if I'm looking at it, they're a team that a very good defense, but struggle to score. Is they got 180 goals compared to
Mm-hmm.
177 given up, which the 177 is the second best in the entire NHL, the best in the Western Conference. So one of the best defensive teams in the league there. And as you mentioned, they bring in Ben Bishop, so a really good goalie picking up his game, as you mentioned. So I think absolutely. I mean, because we mentioned how important Carter Hart is, because how important a goalie is to go and win the cup. So they got their goalie. It's a matter if they can figure out their offense.
Yeah, they also like the Flyers that make their defense work. So I have a great mix of those great budding young defensemen like the Klingbergs and Lindells and Heiskanens of the world, and then have guys like Andre Sakara there to really help those guys, or even Roman Polak, who's a veteran, and guys like that to really help those guys mix in. You're right, though. They are one of those teams. Their biggest issue, similarly to another team that's in the playoffs that would probably be recognized more in the West, that got it now in Arizona, if they could score, because they're a hell of a defensive team too, would probably be recognized more. That's both of those teams' Achilles heel, because you have like top two scorers and you have Rupe Hintz mixing in a little bit where they need other guys to step up. But we also have to remember they have a guy in Andrew Cogliano who has some playoff experience with I don't know why I almost said Jets, with the Ducks. And he's a guy that's a dark horse guy in the past in his career, not anymore. But Ryan Kessler was on an interview with Sportsnet, and he was talking about back when he played with him for the Selke, which is of course combining defense with your overall prowess of your game award for the NHL. And he's a guy that I could see being one of those guys that just steps up in the playoffs after having just a solid season where you always tend to have some of those guys and coming back refreshed. They also have Morton Hansel, who's a good veteran that you might look to really step up for your fourth or third line, depending where they put him. Probably fourth line in the playoffs as a face-off guy. Similarly to the Flyers don't lack that scoring ability like them, but they actually have some of the veteran guys like the Flyers do mixed in with young people that could help them for the postseason, which is definitely a benefit when you've been out of operation for this long. You don't really want just a young team that doesn't have a singled out veteran leader per se. So, but in terms of, for me, I would agree with you. I would agree that, I mean, St. Louis, we just know how impressive they are. If they make the Stanley Cup, they're going to be stiff competition. Colorado's another to talk about deep. I mean, Colorado mostly just has their two lines of their top two operational very well, and then the other two chip in pretty well because Yost and other players haven't even hit their full stride yet. So Colorado's a really scary team because you figure if those guys start just hitting it in the playoffs, they're a team that's definitely right because they were right there with St. Louis. They're basically even with them and definitely pretty much up there almost at that point if everyone starts hitting it with Boston. So they're a team that's really dangerous. And then Vegas, like we always talk about, goaltending. Well, you can't have two better freaking goalies, and two guys that have been up for the Vezina awards in their careers. Obviously, Fleury's won one in the past, I believe, and then Robin Leonard never has yet. But you have two guys that have been very good throughout their whole career track, and Leonard's obviously a young guy that's still coming into his prime. So if they go with him, you have Fleury, who's one of the better playoff goalies of our generation, to fall back on. They're in one of the best positions, especially when it comes to goaltending, and they have a pretty good defense themselves. They just don't have as many name brand people on their defense.
See, I'm gonna disagree with you. Like here, unless that this hold off kind of gets them back to where they were, their goalies have been struggling this year. I mean, their goalies have not been nearly as good. I mean, not even that good compared to other years. I mean, what's carried Vegas right now to get to where they're at is their offense. I mean, Fleury gives up 2.7 goals a game, and Subban gives up 3.18 a game. So, I mean, that's obviously not what you want there from your goalies. I agree with you. Their past history has been really good, but I really believe this year they've been winning off speed and their offense.
No, that has been what's mainly winning. But when you get to the playoffs, like Leonard has a high goals against, but his save percentage is actually really good. Where sometimes your goals against also, of course, plays into your defensive flaws at times when you have your more offensive defensemen on the ice, and you can give up more goals, which is also
Well,
been with their defensive pairings. You've had certain guys step up and other guys blunder in Vegas. That leads to a higher goals against because obviously a 920 save percentage is actually really good. Where also goals against average normally, obviously for the Vezina, it's lower, but for most other guys, it does tend to be higher than it was like a few years ago, just because teams, especially when it comes to teams like Vegas, because when we saw getting to the Cup, they relied on Fleury making big saves time and time again because they're a new team. They're not going to have all those locked in prospects that are just great stay at home defensemen and be able to get all those great stay at home defensemen. Like I said, they have a pretty good, solid defense, but they don't have all name brand guys. So they have guys that definitely can blunder at different times still. So that's been kind of their issue. They don't have, they could get, like they have Theodore developing and they have Nate Schmidt and a couple other people, Brandon McNabb. If they could get like that one kind of just locked in anchor defenseman, that would really help Las Vegas. Because I don't think it's necessarily when it comes to Leonard, at least, because I know they talked about how well he stepped up for them on NHL Network. I think that goals against average at 2.89 is a little deceiving because his save percentage at a 920 is very good, especially.
well, Leonard hasn't played much with Vegas.
Oh no, he hasn't played much with Vegas, but I'm just talking about. And
They've been Subban.
since he's on the, oh yeah, Subban has not been good with Vegas. Malcolm did not do good with
But I'm saying
Vegas.
that's been using over Laner.
Oh yeah, but once Leonard went there, they used him because Robin Leonard they acquired in order to be used for the playoff run because Robin Leonard's still a goalie that's coming into his prime, and Robin Leonard was then one of the guys, or not Robin Leonard, Malcolm Subban was then one of the guys that was let go after that, and Malcolm Subban's of course now in Chicago, so
Gotcha.
that he's a guy that they're not and he actually started having some decent games when he went to Chicago. I think he just needed a change of scenery where he can really figure it out. Where Fleury did struggle a lot this year, but that's why I say goals against is a very deceiving stat for some guys. Because if you look at just his goals against, you would say Flower did better than Leonard, but he didn't because Fleury's career save percentage is around a 915. His save percentage this year was a 905, which is pretty bad, but he still had 5 shutouts, so he stepped up obviously when needed at times. But he had a 2.77 goals against compared to a 2.89 for Leonard. But Leonard had all the other really good save percentage and all the other stats when it comes to goaltenders, like in terms of making those big time stat. He had the more save, he had the better percentage of shots saved and all that different stuff. So that's why sometimes that stat can be a little bit over because obviously Carter Hart's is a little weird this year too because of struggles on the road and then how great he's did at home. Imagine if Carter Hart did 58% even because he's been really struggling on the road or 65% of what he's did at home on the road this year, he would probably have a ridiculous goals against and save percentage that would actually be worthy of those two stats, and he would be one that would actually be in the conversation of, oh, his goals against did not get skewed from anything at all. That's why sometimes I look at save percentage first, just because save percentage doesn't always get as affected by, oh, well, look at this idiot that only knows how to play defense or offense. That's a defenseman that just left my guy wide open in front of the net. like that happened here for how many years until now. So, but either way, I agree. Vegas, you can win by offense. If your offense is clicking in the playoffs, that helps, and then you have veteran goaltending. I still think Fleury struggled this year, but you see his the playoffs are a different beast. Fleury has not had continued struggles. This has really been his first year compared to Lundqvist, who would kind of have to return on the handle as another guy that's been a great playoff guy who's in New York to carry them past the first round with a play-in, obviously, even, where Fleury's a guy that's been very good recently. So that's a guy I think can really bounce back for the postseason, who probably is the best playoff goalie that's active still of our generation. So I think they got that going for them. And they got Robin Leonard, who doesn't have all the playoff experience yet, but can definitely potentially step up for you. And I think that's going to be potentially where he finds his home down the line, because I think they'll end up platooning, like using those two if they end up keeping Fleury, and they might find a way to do that. From reading some different stuff from around the NHL throughout the year, it seems like as soon as they traded for Robin Leonard, wasn't stopped. I read an article about Vegas, and once they traded for him, how well their goaltending room was as soon as they got him in, and like they started working together and stuff. So I think that could be a like marriage made in heaven type thing for Vegas potentially for this season and going forward. So.
No, yeah, I see what you're saying. I don't know. I trust their offense more than their defense. If they get caught in a 0-0 game, I trust them to get a goal there to win. But if it turns into a high-scoring game, I don't think they'd win.
Yeah, that depends who they're playing. Because if they're playing Colorado, I would give it to Vegas. Because Pavel Francouz stepped up this year. And
Colorado scored more goals than Vegas has.
Oh, I understand that.
Like my point is, Vegas has given up 211 goals. Like, it's a very high number compared to most playoff teams.
I completely get that. Their defense has not been as consistent other than their top line compared to as many playoff teams, and it's also because of Fleury struggles this year. But now that they brought in Leonard, who's doing good, he didn't get to play his abundancy amount of games because of the lockdown since he's come in, but he's a guy that's really good. They'll be able to kind of figure it out. If Colorado does have the better overall stats, but the problem is when you come down to the playoffs, it comes to goaltending, and it always tends to usually come to that. Pavel Francouz came out of nowhere for you and has no experience as a whole, really, where Grubauer has minimal playoff experience. So if I had to pick, if it's a 0-0 game based off of scoring, sure, maybe Colorado could score more, but I had to pick off of whose goalie was going to continue to step up more. I would pick Vegas any day over Colorado, and that's not discounting Grubauer or Francouz. It's just there's not nearly enough track record to go off of, especially for Pavel.
I trust Colorado in their defense, is what I'm saying. It's not just like you just mentioned. It's not just about goalie. It's about how much you.
I understand that, but if you're in a 0-0 game,
yeah, but you're contradicting. You're contradicting your last argument. Is what I'm saying. Like, you just mentioned how like you can't just go off the numbers there, because if your defense lets up and doesn't help the goalie out, the goalie's going to do worse. So.
Oh, I understand that, but
because also you have two goalies in Colorado who are doing better than both goalies on Vegas right now.
Fleury stepped up in the
save percentage and everything. Colorado's goalies are doing better than Vegas' goalies.
Fleury was one of the best to step up time and time again in the postseason and carry teams when they haven't played good defense. My point is, if Colorado, who has, again, a mix, they do have a very good defense because they have a mix of veterans and youngsters. But my problem is if some of those youngsters start feeling the playoffs a little bit like the Sam Girards and et cetera, their goaltending's not, I don't know if they're going to be able to stand on their head, even though they have better stats this year. Yeah, they have better stats this year, but they don't have experience. Pavel Francois came out of absolutely nowhere. So when it comes to the playoffs, experience kind of does matter. And when it comes to save percentage, yeah, he was good, but he was also just a little bit above what's it called? Above Leonard. And then Gruby got injured. That was his issue. And then he was below Leonard when it comes to save percentage. Not goals against, but when it comes to save percentage. But so I think they're close to even teams because if Vegas can step up and have their defense play a little bit and Fleury or Leonard's able to really be that anchor, I trust them more to be an anchor goalie in the postseason when everything's at amped up level because the postseason's a different beast.
I disagree. I don't think
You can't
I don't think they're even. I think
you
if you
can't
put these two teams head to head, I think Avalanche win in 5 or 6 games.
I think it would have to be at least 6 because I think Vegas battles enough. They have enough veterans on that team to get them to at least. I probably shouldn't have used the word even. I should have used they're almost even because they were only separated by a total of like 6 points. So I mean they were only separated by a total of 3 games at the season's end. So it wasn't too much. And Vegas started when dwindling a bit. So they never had if they're able to come back and really hit the ground running. That's why it all depends. It's tough to predict because anybody can really come back and hit the ground running. Where Vegas, if that's the case, has a better case with their two goalies because they have experience, not in this scenario, but in terms of playing where Francois and Grubauer coming into this where it's an odd experience, that might throw them off a bit more than a veteran. But I just feel with the playoffs, it comes down to experience goaltending. And it's not that I don't believe the team has a chance to go for because you don't have to have experienced goaltending, but you also have to have a goaltender that normally then stepped up and was one of the best in the league during times of the year, like Bennington was last year for St. Louis, and then became like a rookie of the year guy in that conversation and all that in his first year, where Pavel Francois was really good, but he didn't become that. That's all that concerned me. You don't have the resume to go to when it comes to counting on your goaltender. Where Washington has even more of a resume than Colorado. They just faltered at the end of the season. But Braden Holtby, again, was one of the main reasons you won the damn Stanley Cup. Just like Fleury was one of the main reasons Pittsburgh won one of their Stanley Cups, and one of the biggest reasons, if not 80% of the reason they got to the Cup in their first year. So that's I just have a little bit more confidence and experience when it comes to the playoffs, and you know how much I weigh experience. That's why if I didn't weigh experience, Lamar Jackson would probably be my second QB. The fact that I like seeing it more than 1 year is why he's 7th when I did that list. Where when I do goalies, when I do Carter Hart was still out of the top 5 because you need to keep adding more and more years to it where that's kind of just the way I look at it from experience wise. If Pavel Francois comes out of nowhere and has back-to-back seasons like this, then you're going to be going in the next year. And then they have Gruby, and they're a great duo like Hart and Elliott have become. And then if we get another guy or keep Elliott and you're able to have that duo, then that works. But I just have more confidence if one guy doesn't work for Vegas, their fallback option on their other goalie is another guy with a bigger resume. Colorado's fallback option, because they're probably going to start Grubauer for experience, is a guy that has none. So your defense is going to have to play great every game. And if you're playing against a good offense, I just think in the postseason, it's not expected for your defense to play great every game. That's just the way I look at it because obviously the Bruins had a much better defense overall than us when they went up 3-0 years ago, and then we came back, and obviously their defense just became non-existent during parts of that comeback. So sometimes it's just whoever catches the hotter hand. And if I had to fall back to somebody, I think that those goalies have a better chance of catching the hotter hand because they've been there, done that than the Colorado netminders. But I think Colorado, because of the now, let me close by saying this though. I think Colorado, because of their overall team, has a better chance than Vegas to win the cup. But if I picked it just based off of goaltending, and if it came down to whose goalie had to win the game, I would not pick Colorado. If it was a game that was just crazy offensively, and you had goaltenders stepping up for and standing up to each other minute per minute, I wouldn't pick Colorado in the end, probably coming out in that scenario. But in terms of offensive juggernaut scenario, and in terms of battling most teams other than maybe St. Louis, in terms of their defense to offense, yeah, I agree with that. I just think depending how their goaltending shakes out, is what's going to concern me about them. And that's tough for me to say because I like watching Colorado. Actually, they were one of my fun teams. I always tell Zach this. Their announcer on the radio, I can't remember his name, but he's funny as hell, just like Tim Saunders. He's fantastic. He yells. He goes nuts. He's great. And I listened to him on the way back from a lot of Phillies games last year for the playoffs. So I believe in them definitely, but I just have more questions with their goaltending compared to even like Dallas. When you go down more, I don't have as many questions. Where Colorado and Edmonton in the top 5 of the West, their questions are more just with experienced goaltending. When it comes to having when it comes to Edmonton, it's also you kind of just have 3 guys that lead your offense. But when it comes to having stars, you definitely have them. But with Colorado, you also have a deep team. You just have to hope in the playoffs, too, your bottom 2 lines kind of do a little bit more for you. So you don't have McKinnon and Radnan and everybody in your top 2 pairs helping your bottom 2 that haven't provided as much scoring as you would hope because Yost and others are taking a little bit longer to develop.
Yeah, no, I mean, I hear you. I think, again,
what I saw from them last year, though. So.
Who?
Colorado. Colorado did show me a sign that they were moving in the right direction last year. Now that they have a random goaltender that stepped in out of nowhere, that helps. The problem is the random part. I hate to say it first. That's the problem.
Well, if he just said he impressed you last year, you saw some of it last year.
He impressed me this year. I'm saying they impressed me last year. Francois impressed me this year. So now that they have a random goalie that did good on top of it,
if they impressed you last year, wouldn't that have been starting to see it?
Yeah. No. That the problem with me is if Grubauer was able to stay healthy all season and showed his good statistics throughout, I probably would have been more confident. The fact that I don't know where he's at also falters me a little bit. But so if he's so that contributes to it. But anyway, we should be saying our wrap up points because we only have about a minute left here. So I don't know what you wanted to wrap up on.
I would say, given my sleeper team in the West was the Stars, my sleeper team in the East would be the I'd say probably Columbus Blue Jackets because again they were a pretty good team all year. They got beat up by injuries. They have a fantastic coach, and with this layoff, they probably get everything back so they can find their rhythm again. I'd say they'd be a sleeper dark horse team from the East to get to the finals.
Gotcha. No, those are definitely 2 really good teams. I would say a team that I also very much like from the East could potentially be because they have the goaltending. Toronto, if their other stats are finally able to, because they have the team, they just haven't been able to put up the stats this year. So if they're able to get it together, they're a team that people haven't talked about full-heartedly. And then, of course, Calgary's another team that hasn't put up good stats this year, but has the team. So if they're able to get it together with the layoff, again, another team might be able to throw in there. Nashville hasn't had the stats, but they have the team. Some of those teams might be able to surprise a little bit as well. But we're at the 59, 28-minute mark, so I don't know if you wanted to give your Twitter handle.
Yeah, my personal Twitter handle is AJ_Santangelo, so you can find me on that. or also I do the ANYP podcast, Chase Independent, with Joe here as well.
Yeah. And then mine's at JJ Boric 26 and true_Philly Sport. This has been the Grittiest Take. Have a splendid day, everybody.